Good morning, everyone. My name is Aude Matthey-Doret. I'm from Switzerland. I graduated from Lund University in 2015 with a master's degree in sustainability science. And since then, I've been working in the field of GIS, which stands for Geographic Information System, in the humanitarian context, working with Doctors Without Borders and CAT-WG. Now let's move on to my master thesis. So for my research, I focused on the social dimension of the complexity, more specifically at its desirability dimension for urban dwellers. And I took Geneva city as a case study for this research. The broad scope of my research was to question the debated concept of the desirability dimension of the complexity, which previously led to critiques of the model for running counter to the residential aspiration of its urban dwellers, but also for undermining social equity. And these were the aspects that I decided to analyze in the context of the city of Geneva. To structure my research, I followed three main research axes. First, how is the complexity model implemented in Geneva, looking at the context-specific factors? Second, how desirable is the complexity from the perspective of new urban dwellers? What are their socio-demographic profiles? What are their residential aspirations? And third, how sustainable is the complexity model in the context of urban planning? To conduct my research, I followed a demographic and residential approach informed by the literature on reurbanization in order to gain insight into the demographic changes, but also into the residential attractiveness of central cities. The main findings regarding the second research axis shows that Geneva complexity is desirable only for certain residential groups, but not for all of them. We see that traditional families tend to leave central districts, while other specific groups, such as what we call the new middle class or gentrifiers, can be associated to the renewed attractiveness of city center, driving the reurbanization process. They are mostly represented by young affluent professionals with higher social professional status and in possession of a university degree. And this upward residential shift could be associated to new build gentrification processes, By looking at the demographic dynamics behind the reurbanization process of Geneva, my research suggests that the desirability of Geneva city is strongly associated to the city-mindedness of specific residential groups, such as the new middle class, whose residential preferences in terms of both the location, but also the type of accommodation are in line with what a compact city can offer. As a take-home message, we say that the complexity as an urban form shows complex interplay between renewed attractiveness of city life, different population demographic changes, and various urban dynamics such as gentrification processes or reurbanization processes. Thank you all for listening.
Good afternoon, I'm Gladys Tong and I've graduated from Utrecht University in the Netherlands. Today I would like to share a little bit of my own point of view on compact city research. First of all, let me talk about my master thesis project. I have did my master research on the livability of a compact city, which is Hong Kong from local perspectives. I've interviewed experts and local residents and see how they would like to evaluate the livability of Hong Kong. As a result, all the hypotheses I've identified I've only rejected one of them, and I have validated 4 of them and refined 3 of them. To briefly talk about my research finding, Hong Kong, the urban livability can benefit through sufficient and accessible protected green spaces, as well as an affordable and highly efficient public transportation system. Urban livability was also enhanced by high accessibility to infrastructure and local services. However, the negative externalities were also validated in my case study. Urban livability would be decreased due to lack of living space and lack of affordable housing, intensified impact of noise pollution, in-city insufficient green or open spaces, as well as intensified psychological stress. Therefore, I would say both positive benefits and negative trade-offs were also found true in the case study of Hong Kong. Following, I would like to explore whether the trade-offs caused by the compactness and increasing density could be balanced by the benefits brought by the compact urban form and thus reaching a livable condition. Um, In my case study of Hong Kong, it is found that green space protection policy in Hong Kong is actually limiting the land supply, and thus we have a continuous rising housing price problem. Also, due to lack of land and land shortage problem, we can only further intensify the existing domestic areas, and therefore it actually leads to some externalities which further hinders the livability of Hong Kong. And these externalities include overcrowding, pollution, or congestions. And from my interview with a lot of local residents in Tong, actually those externalities start to outweigh all the benefits brought by a compact urban form. And therefore, I would like to raise the issue here that we may want to investigate more on how to balance out the externalities and benefits in a compact city before we further develop more compact cities and see how we could improve the livability of a compact city. That's all for today, and thank you for your invitation. Goodbye.
Hi, my name is Ryan Gever, and I graduated from the University of Oslo in 2019 with a master's in human geography, specializing in urban planning and development. I currently work for the Norwegian government's property manager, developer, and advisor on property affairs, where I work with our environmental strategy and research and development portfolio. My thesis explores the compact city, or rather compact urbanism, in small remote settlements, which represent a scalar context that is farthest from the largest centralmost cities that dominate research in urban geography and planning, as large-scale cities only represent a small portion of the global urban landscape. Through qualitative walking interviews in remote island and Arctic towns of less than 10,000 inhabitants, I developed a set of theoretical and empirical recommendations for adapting compact urbanism to small and remote scalar contexts, focusing on increasing the likelihood of compact initiatives to succeed and contribute to sustainable urban transformations. I focused on three characteristics to measure compactness: density, mixed land use, and non-car dependency. Key to measuring compact urbanism is the connectivity and relationship between the center and the periphery, between built urban form with nature and rural hinterlands. A spatial arrangement can only be described as compact when the distance, whether real or perceived, from the central point to its outer border is small. Thus, compact urbanism can be well suited to this end of the scalar spectrum. Small remote settlements differ from their larger peers, socially and material, which shape their prospects for compact initiatives. Relative to denser cities, identity spans a wide area and distances become perceived in units of time rather than length. They are often discarded as too small to matter, even though there are 40% more inhabitants in urban settlements with a population that is measured in the thousands rather than the millions. And they often face the constant temptation to develop peripheral areas that are both near and undeveloped, a challenge that is unfamiliar in many city regions. Access to a central district is key, but even more so is access to the periphery. Some land uses are perceived as suitable to mixed-use central districts, while others are not, such as housing for families with young children. Public transit becomes very difficult in these contexts. Thus, mobility transitions must focus on conditions for soft transit, such as walking and biking within the central core. Therefore, my empirical recommendations for pursuing compact sustainable urbanism in small remote settlements include integrating nature and green throughways, concentrating all vibrant and social uses within the center, pursuing new family-friendly housing alternatives to single-family homes, creating relationships in the built form and architectural aesthetics between what is new and what is old, as well as ensuring that inward mobility needs in and out of the center can be met without a car. My theoretical recommendations are inclusion of small-scale context in urban theory and discourse, a shift from a foundation on scale to a foundation on function in urban theory, clarification that small and remote does not equal peripheral and isolated, differentiation between compaction and centralization forces, and promotion of the opportunities to actually contribute to sustainable urban transformations on the lower side of the scale. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mae-Ling Stuyt, and I'm a junior urban designer at Urhan, and I graduated last year from my master urbanism at the TU Delft. My thesis was about possibilities of industrial integration in cities together with densification within the existing city borders, with the objective to create diverse qualitative live-work environments. So my starting point was to look at where and why can or should industries be kept, and then how can it be done. My design location was Zaandam in the Netherlands, which is historically an industrial region that turned into a city. As industry is part of its cultural identity, I looked at how can industry be kept, but also the region still remain livable for its inhabitants. So why even look at this? I think complexity is not compact if we keep expanding into the landscape with our business districts. As you can see in the Amsterdam region, business districts in the city center edge are transformed, mixed with housing, and industry is pushed further up towards the outer edge. So my proposal is to include industries in the compact city concept. How can you do that? I think making a decision or choice where to keep large industrial premises is important, especially production industry, as these are the hardest to integrate. The benefits are numerous, for example, nearby employment, but also diverse employment, affordable spaces that for smaller businesses that often cluster around these larger industries, and keeping them in the city encourages an efficient site layout. So how to decide whether to keep or relocate an industry? I decided based on these 3 points. So the difficulty to relocate the industry, especially production industry, makes a lot of investments in machinery that are bound to the location. So first, find, talk, investigate options with these companies. Secondly, the positioning in the network. Does the industry have appropriate access now, yes or no? And in the future, in relation to residential flows of existing and new housing areas. As transitions needed are not only connected to the location of certain functions, but also to the streets they use. And third, do they have an efficient site layout? As this can already reduce a lot of nuisances toward the neighboring plots. So based on deciding where industries are kept, from this, transitions can be made either gradual or direct. The potential transitions, spatial qualities, and densification options are different for an existing neighborhood, such as Koog aan de Zaan, or a transformation location, such as Achtersluispolder. You can look at my proposals and the principles I use for creating spatial qualities in live-work environments in my thesis on the TU Delft repository. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation. Great honor that I was asked by Henry to make this video for you guys to explain something about my thesis, and I'm going to quickly run through it. First, something about me. I graduated cum laude at the Faculty of Architecture at the TU Delft on this thesis. And currently I'm working at the province of North Holland as a urban designer. So my thesis started out with the quotes of Jan Gehl, a famous urban life protagonist. An urbanist, first life, then spaces, then buildings. The other way around never works. How can we strike a balance between the compact city and urban life? And urban life really stands for the Jan Gehl approach to urbanism. And they are really crucial paradigms for densification. But how do they relate? So the compact city really lessens the impact on the environment, but urban life lessens the impact on the society. And how can we make these two paradigms work together? For that, I looked into the literature, the existing literature on the urban life, and 3 things came to the surface. It was the urban network, urban quality, and urban volumes could be used as 3 categories to measure and obtain information about the compact city and how to integrate urban life into that. Looking at the literature, the OECD did quite a comprehensive study to 300 scientific papers on the compact city. And they actually saw 3 main negative effects. That's traffic congestion, personal health, and a negative effect on the subjective well-being. So I started looking, how can I mitigate those negative effects with those urban life components? I came up with a methodological framework. So how did I measure the complexity? I did it a lot with data. So FSI, GSI, and between-us algorithm, going about especially that quality part. That is, of course, hard to grasp especially in data, but you can do it with patterns. I reframed the ideal compact city using research by design. My main takeaway was that you have to find the balance between high densities and the human scale, and that they will only work together if you plan thoroughly. Open and big data are really the game changers for understanding and predicting the flows. So have a talk with your computer science department. I can really support that. Don't look purely at the floor space index or the ground space index and the amount of square meters of greenery. No, try to look at it holistically. If I put greenery here, will it create an attractive route for bicyclists or pedestrians that are actually going towards a destination where there are amenities that can be mixed into certain attraction points? And lastly, it is possible, I believe, to create a model of the compact city that mitigates its negative effects and is a truly sustainable method of growth for the future of cities. Thank you for listening, and for more on this thesis, including the sources, you can scan this code and it will take you right through it. Thank you.